First, an overview of the speech. Charles.
I thought it was rather appalling. I found it mind-numbingly bureaucratic, flat, bloodless. It was almost inside the baseball describing how bureaucracies work. And his conclusions, his directive number one is that high priority intelligence will now have to be treated urgently, not just some of the time, but all of the time. Well, that's a remarkable advance. And then he said at the beginning, the first conclusion is that in this world, timely intelligence, et cetera, is of the utmost importance. Well, this is a president who, after we seized Abdul Muttalib, who had extremely timely intelligence regarding Yemen, who had just been armed and trained in Yemen, was given a lawyer and Miranda rights and shut up almost immediately after singing at the beginning about everything he knew. That is the timeliest of intelligence regarding Yemen, which the president's terrorism advisor said today is the newest and the most aggressive and the most surprising al-Qaeda element in the world. Here's information waiting to be gleaned and received, and we are gratuitously giving away. Talking about not connecting the dots, the administration has little control over what happens before a terror attack, but it had total control over what happened afterwards, and it blew it.
Charles.
Look, it's quite remarkable. You've got to ask yourself, why did the president speak today? What exactly was the news he gave us? It was a recap. Perhaps he was undoing the impression he gave 2 days ago, in which he blamed everybody on his team, and he said, there's been people haven't been held accountable, there've been mistakes, and he kind of in his usual way hovered above it like regally. And today he grudgingly offered the buck stops here, although there are the consequences of that it doesn't mean anything. He says it and then he moves on. So it's not exactly clear to me in what way he advanced anything here other than to make an appearance, to announce a lot of bureaucratic steps, which are, we haven't even discussed them because they are so meaningless. And what exactly is he going to do? He says he'll spend an extra $1 billion on security in airports. Well, he could start by by changing the rules under which 80-year-olds are strip searched, and half of the time of the TSA is wasted on people who obviously aren't going to be a threat to anybody on airplanes.
Charles, you wanted to point about the president saying we're at war with al-Qaeda, and calling them terrorists numerous times.
Yeah, look, it looks as if he gave this speech in order to undo the impression of his earlier addresses. He said the buck stops here because it looks as if he was detached and blaming everybody else. But secondly, he says we are at war, which is a concession because people are complaining about the fact, rightly so, that he gave the bomber over Detroit a defense lawyer and treated him as a civilian and defendant. But here's how the president actually said it. He said we are at war with al-Qaeda, who are a network of hatred. Now, first of all, it's not just al-Qaeda. It's jihadism, with cells all over the world. Al-Qaeda is a leading edge of it, but they're imitators, affiliates, cells all over the world. It's a religious ideology. It's a religious cult. It's an extremist cult. And when he speaks about hatred, well, there's a lot of hatred in the world. It's not an inchoate hatred. It's hatred of a specific kind. It's a religious fanaticism, a hatred of the West and of its liberties, etc. And when you don't identify what the war is about, you leave everyone in the cold, and you end up saying, as Obama did, one of our responses, he talked about, of course, himself, was reaching out and assuring Muslims in an interest of mutual respect that we understand their aspirations, and he named 3 items: for education, a secure job, and security. Well, the bomber over Detroit was well educated, and he had all the security of a mansion in London. The guy who killed the 7 CIA agents in Afghanistan was a doctor. Osama bin Laden is a multi-millionaire. This is not about oppression or poverty or lack of education. The Fort Hood shooter had education and security as an Army psychiatrist. He will not speak about the nature of the war in a way that remains incomprehensible, and thus you've got to ask yourself, a network of hatred, why and over what?